Under the sky is perfect enjoyment to be found or not? Are there any who can preserve themselves alive or not? If there are, what do they do? What do they maintain? What do they avoid? What do they attend to? Where do they resort to? Where do they keep from? What do they delight in? What do they dislike? What the world honors is riches, dignities, longevity, and being deemed able. What it delights in is rest for the body, rich flavors, fine garments, beautiful colors, and pleasant music. What it looks down on are poverty and mean condition, short life, and being deemed feeble. What men consider bitter experiences are that their bodies do not get rest and ease, that their mouths do not get food of rich flavor, that their persons are not finely clothed, that their eyes do not see beautiful colors, and that their ears do not listen to pleasant music. If they do not get these things, they are very sorrowful and go on to be troubled with fears. Their thoughts are all about the body. Are they not silly? The rich embitter their lives by their incessant labors. They accumulate more wealth than they can use. If they did not do so, they would be content when they had enough. Those who seek for honors carry their pursuit of them from the day into the night, full of anxiety about whether they are skillful or not. The birth of man is at the same time the birth of his sorrow. If he lives long, he becomes more and more stupid, and the longer is his anxiety that he may not die. How great is his bitterness! Meritorious officers are regarded by the world as good, but their goodness is not sufficient to keep their persons alive. I do not know whether the goodness ascribed to them is really good or really not good. If indeed it is considered good, it is not sufficient to preserve their persons alive. If it is deemed not good, it is sufficient to preserve other men alive. Hence it is said, when faithful remonstrances are not listened to, the remonstrant should sit still, let his ruler take his course, and not strive with him. Therefore, when Zisu strove with his ruler, he brought himself the mutilation of his body. If he had not so striven, he would not have acquired his fame. Was such a goodness really good, or was it not? As to what the common people do and what they find their enjoyment in, I do not know whether the enjoyment is really enjoyment or not. I see them in their pursuit of it, following their aims as if with the determination of death, as if they could not stop in their course. But what they call enjoyment would not be so to me. Yet I do not say that there is no enjoyment in it. Is there indeed such enjoyment, or is there not? I consider doing nothing to obtain it to be the great enjoyment, while ordinary people consider it to be a great evil. Hence it is said, perfect enjoyment is to be without enjoyment. The highest praise is to be without praise. The right and the wrong on this point of enjoyment cannot be determined according to the view of the world. Nevertheless, this doing nothing to obtain it may determine the right and the wrong. Since perfect enjoyment is held to be keeping the body alive, it is only by this doing nothing that that end is likely to be secured. Allow me to try to explain this more fully. Heaven does nothing, and thence comes its serenity. Earth does nothing, and thence comes its rest. By the union of these two inactivities, all things are produced. How vast and imperceptible is the process! It seems to come from nowhere. How imperceptible and vast! There is no visible image of it. All things in their variety grow from this inaction. Hence it is said, heaven and earth do nothing, and yet there is nothing that they do not do. But what man is there who can attain to this inaction? When Zhuang's wife died, Huizi went to condole with him, and, finding him squatted on the ground, drumming on the basin and singing, said to him, when a wife has lived with her husband and brought up children and then dies in her old age, not to wail for her is enough. When you go on to drum on this basin and sing, is it not an excessive and strange demonstration? Zhuang replied, it is not so. When she first died, was it possible for me to be not affected by the event? But I reflected on the commencement of her being, not yet born to life. She had no bodily form. Not only had she no bodily form, she had no breath. During the intermingling of the waste and dark chaos there ensued a change, and there was breath. Another change, and there was bodily form. Another change, and there came birth and life. There is now a change again, and she is dead. The relation between these things is like the procession of the 4 seasons from spring to autumn, from winter to summer. Now she lies with her face up, sleeping in the great chamber between heaven and earth. If I were to fall sobbing and go on to wail for her, I should think that I did not understand what was appointed for all. I therefore restrain myself. Mr. Deformed and Mr. Onefoot were looking at the mound graves of the departed in the wild of Kunlun, where Huang Zi had entered into his rest. Suddenly tumors began to grow on their left wrists, which made them distressed. The former said, "Do you dread it?" "No," replied the other. "Why should I dread it? Life is a borrowed thing. The living frame thus borrowed is but so much dust. Life and death are like day and night, and you and I were looking at the graves of those who have undergone their change. If my change is coming to me, why should I dislike it?" When Zhuang went to Chu, he saw an empty skull, bleached indeed, but still retaining its shape. Tapping it with his horse switch, he asked it, saying, "Did you, sir, in your greed of life, fail in the lessons of reason and come to this? Or did you do so in the service of a perishing state, by the punishment of the acts? Or was it through your evil conduct, reflecting disgrace on your parents, on your wife and children? Or was it through your hard endurances of cold and hunger? Or was it that you had completed your term of life?" Having given expression to these questions, he took up the skull and made a pillow of it when he went to sleep. At midnight the skull appeared to him in a dream and said, "What you said to me was after the fashion of an orator. All your words were about the entanglements of men in their lifetime. There are none of those things after death. Would you like to hear me, sir, tell you about death?" "I should," said Zhuang. The skull resumed, "In death there are not the distinctions of ruler above and minister below. There are none of the phenomena of the 4 seasons. Tranquil and at ease our years are those of heaven and earth. No king in his court has greater enjoyment than we have." Zhuang did not believe it and said, "If I could get the ruler of our destiny to restore your body to life with its bones and flesh and skin, and to give back your father and mother, your wife and children, and all your village acquaintances, would you wish me to do so?" The skull stared fixedly at him, knitted its brows, and said, "How could I cast away the enjoyment of my royal court and undertake again the toils of life among mankind?" When Yan Hui went eastward to Chur, Confucius wore a look of sorrow. Chuang left his mat and asked him, saying, "Your humble disciple ventures to ask how it is that the going eastward of Hui to Chur has given you such a look of sadness." Confucius said, "Your question is good. Formerly, Guanzi used words of which I very much approve. He said, 'A small bag cannot be made to contain what is large. A short rope cannot be used to draw water from a deep well.' So it is, and man's appointed lot is definitely determined, and his body is adapted for definite ends, so that neither the one nor the other can be augmented or diminished. I'm afraid that Hui will talk with the Marquis of Chir about the ways of Wangdi, Yao, and Shun, and go on to relate the words of Suiren and Shennong. The Marquis will seek for the correspondence of what he is told in himself, and, not finding it, will suspect the speaker, and that speaker, being suspected, will be put to death. And have you not heard this? Formerly a sea bird alighted in the suburban country of Lu. The Marquis went out to meet it and brought it to the ancestral temple to banquet it there. The Chui Shao was performed to afford it music. An ox, a sheep, and a pig were killed to supply the food. The bird, however, looked at everything with dim eyes and was very sad. It did not venture to eat a single bit of flesh nor drink a single cupful, and in 3 days it died. The Marquis was trying to nourish the bird with what he used for himself. They who would nourish birds should let them perch in the deep forest or roam over sandy plains, float on the rivers and lakes, feed on eels and small fish, wing their flight in regular order, and then stop, be free and at ease in their resting places. It was a distress to that bird to hear men speak. What did it care for all the noise and hubbub made about it? If the music of the Chui Shao or the Xianchi were performed in the wild of the Tongting lake, birds would fly away and beasts would run off when they heard it, and fishes would dive to the bottom. But men, when they hear it, come all round together and look on. Fishes live and men die in the water. They are different in constitution and therefore in their likes and dislikes. Hence it was that the ancient sages did not require from all the same ability nor demand the same performances. They gave names according to the reality of what was done, and gave their approbation where it was specially suitable. This was what was called the method of universal adaptation and of sure success. Liezi, once upon a journey, took a meal by the roadside. There he saw a skull 100 years old. Pulling away the bush under which it lay, he pointed to it and said, "It is only you and I who know that you are not dead and that aforetime you were not alive. Do you indeed really find in death the nourishment that you like? Do I really find in life my proper enjoyment? The seeds of things are multitudinous and minute. On the surface of the water they form a membranous texture. When they reach to where the land and water join, they become the lichens that we call the clothes of frogs and oysters. Coming to life on mounds and heights, they become the plantain, and, receiving manure, appear as crow's feet. The roots of the crow's feet become grubs, and its leaves butterflies. This butterfly, known by the name of Su, is changed into an insect and comes to life under a furnace. Then it has the form of a moth, is named the Chutua. The Chutua, after 1,000 days, becomes a bird called the Chang Yuku. Its saliva becomes the Sumi, and this, again, the Shishi, or pickle eater. The Yi Luo is produced from the pickle eater, the Huang Kuang from the Chuiyu, the Mo Jue from the Poquan, the Yingxi, uniting with the bamboo that has long ceased to put forth sprouts, produces the Qingying. The Qingying, the panther the horse, and the horse the man. Man then again enters into the great machinery of evolution, from which all things come forth at birth and which they enter at death.